This is Sneaker Gears. My name is Levi, and over the weekend, Nike announced and released the Paul George 2 or the PG2. Now, this is the entry-level signature shoe for Nike, but they did it in a lot of hoopla with a lot of hype. So this was first released on Instagram early Saturday morning on some leaks. Later that day, probably a couple hours, it showed Paul George was actually going to be wearing those shoes, and probably 20-30 minutes later, PlayStation had a release and Nike had an official release. So a lot of hype building behind this shoe. This is going to be the PlayStation version, releasing February 10th for $110, which is really cheap. This is like getting a pair of Pumas or Sauconys on the low. So the fact that this is a signature shoe, the fact that it has all the tech, and we'll go over that in a second, there's definitely a lot of hype behind this. Now, first thoughts, the hype behind the signature colorway coming out is amazing, but overall it's a pretty basic shoe. There's nothing behind it. I would say the Kyrie line is still going to look better overall, but they did bring a lot of things from the one, and I think they are trying to be aggressive in the marketplace, setting the example for everyone else. So first, let's get into some of the cool things that either you may have missed or some things you don't know about the Paul George 2. Alright, the first thing that makes this hype is the shoe glows. It has a light on it. Now, something you may not notice, it's using an LED battery, which is supposed to last the life of the shoe. So unlike the Marty McFlys, you're not going to have to recharge this, but you're still getting a shoe that either lights or pulses, which is definitely hot. So, not functional, very cool. Any Jordan heads out there, you're putting patent leather on the shoe, you're going to get our attention. So what's nice is the initial colorway is going to have patent leather around the rear end. Now, the Paul George 1 was able to bring some real materials, whether it's suede or leather, to the shoe to complement some of the new age or new materials they're using, which really help with the containment, but also it just feels like you're getting your money's worth. So I'm glad they're bringing that back. One thing they are taking away, though, is the Velcro strap. Now, I wanted to compare this for you guys because it's similar to what they did with the Kyrie line. So the Kyrie 2 brought the strap, which really had huge containment. Like, this shoe locked you in. You weren't moving at all. What they did is they switched up, and you can see a very similar feel to the new Paul George, just like in the Kyrie, where they added those flywire cables right at the forefoot. Now, they're doing one up. They're actually putting a full elastic band right in the forefoot here. So even if you have a wide foot, it should accommodate you very well. And then they're putting the materials for the forefoot on the outside of what the shoe build is, so you can actually tighten or loosen those independently. So it should give you a very similar feel to what the Paul George 1 does, but obviously it's going to be able to accommodate more feet. Now, that was the second thing they changed as far as obviously looks and not taking the strap off, is the initial Paul George 1 was actually a complete booty system. Just one piece, really straightforward. Now, this did two things. One, the lockdown on this was phenomenal. I love that I was a wide footer and I had to go up half a size, or technically maybe a full size. Got to do a 13 just to get my foot in. If you had a high instep or you had a wide foot, potentially it possibly would not work for you. So with the addition of removing that strap, they've also made this a traditional tongue on the Paul George 2. So again, wide footers should be able to adjust that a bit more, so it's going to accommodate more people. This was my #1 budget shoe for 2017, available now for $50-60 bucks. You can see the natural materials they use in the back, very similar. Looks wise, I still think the Paul George 1 looks better, but performance-wise, here's where it starts to get really cool. Alright, so the #1 thing on a shoe to make sure it performs the best is fit, which, again, Paul George had a great job on the 1, and I think the 2 they're improving on. Second thing that makes a shoe great is the traction. And the #1 traction lately for the last few years has been the crazy explosive. Now, this is the 1, I have the 2. The traction looks really similar to this sucker. So the way you have lines kind of going everywhere. Now, what they're taking from this is kind of the ripples from sound effects on water. Like a storyline, he likes fishing, whatever. The traction pattern looks like it's going to be solid. It looks deep. It looks spaced, so dust is not going to get caught. One thing we don't know is if it's going to be a solid or kind of softer rubber. So as far as longevity, not sure about that. Up until recently, it's been the crazy explosive and generally your Kyrie line as far as the best traction. So if you're able to put better traction on a shoe, have better fit, All right, the key point now is cushion, and this is where it's really cool. The cushion is what sets this apart. Now, you probably read they upgraded the zoom millimeter bag from an 8mm bag to a 10mm. 2mm doesn't sound like a lot, but it actually does make a difference. Now, it's not only that, it's where it's placed. They've placed it directly under the forefoot, which 4 years ago, maybe it's 5, was called Unlock Zoom with the Jordan 28. The last shoe you could buy this from Nike or Jordan with Unlock Zoom was the Melo M13. Now, officially, as of a few months ago, they actually are no longer giving Melo his own signature line. He'll probably get retros, he'll probably have player editions, and they're going to go a different route. The new Jordan 1 Equality was actually considered a Melo branding. So, this shoe, as you can see, the Zoom Air kind of protrudes a little bit, and inside, your foot is directly on the Zoom bag. You can't buy that anymore. This used to be a $250 tech, $225, $200. It was on the Superfly, and they switched that over to this ridiculous React cushioning that's terrible. It was on the Melo line from the M10, 11, 12, 13. Now that it's gone, they put it on a $110 shoe, y'all. So now technically Unlock Zoom should have like a P-Bax plate on top of the Zoom bag and then your foot. Who cares? If there's no plate there, your foot's on the Zoom bag, it's still going to feel incredible. And I would recommend for most people, and this is totally personal preference, is having the Zoom bag in the forefoot, not the heel. So if you look at Nike's entire line, Cousteau actually put, is it a hot take, is the PG2 going to be the best Nike shoe this year? And you know what? If it's going to have the best traction, which it looks like it might, and it's going to have Unlock Zoom, which is phenomenal, at $110, you're going to have a fit that's going to have tremendous lockdown. Outside, if you're looking for something that's more of a mid or a high cut, it might be. Now, the Kobe line and the Kyrie line have resorted to Zoom Air in the heel. The Kyrie is now using Cushlon. Amazing. The Kobe is using Lunar. Maybe a little bit better, but it's not going to last as long. So now that comes to personal preference. Again, I would recommend having Zoom the forefoot because that's generally where you're playing when you're running anyway. The next step up is your KD10, which is honestly just a poor man's LeBron 15 because you don't have that full articulation. So now you're looking at a LeBron 15, which is their highest signature line, that does have better cushion, that does have better materials and knit, but it's also $75 more retail. Now, even when those go on sale, the LeBron 15 has been right around $120 to $125. You can get the PG1 for like 50, 60 bucks. So even apples to apples, retail or they're both being on sale, all things being equal, it's a $60 to $70 difference. Are you getting a better shoe with the LeBron 15? You're getting a different shoe. It's a lot more cushion. It doesn't have nearly the lockdown, although it is very good. And you're getting a full knit shoe versus using raw materials. Again, it's not quite apples to apples, apple to oranges. And if you're telling me to pick one for that price point, where I can tell most athletes almost at any position, that PG2 is going to be a killer. And they're doing it for $110. So between that and $110, $120 for the Kyrie 4, they really put a stamp on the Dame 4, knocking that out of the competition. Last year, the Dame 4 was a tremendous value, obviously a great performer, but honestly, for $5 less or $5 more, either one of the Nike offerings are now a better shoe. And then all of a sudden, if you want to compare that to Under Armour or anything else, I'm not a Nike bandwagon, but they're doing some amazing stuff. This PG2 with the fit, with the traction, and then with the cushion should be amazing. So I'm excited for the performance. Now, if you look at the OKC colorways and some of the ones coming out, it does look pretty boring, but like Nightwing says, I mean, colorways can make a huge difference because I can tell you the first colorway with the PS4 or the PlayStation version, that is something I really do want. So the other couple colorways with the orange suede, that looks kind of foo-foo for me. I mean, it looks basic. I don't really care about it. But at the same time, if those are going to go on sale for 50, 60 bucks down the road, damn. So, guys, I'm excited about this. This is going to be a huge performance release. Hopefully, you guys learned a few things about it, get you excited for what you want. This, because it is going to be a limited release, they're selling for $110. It's probably going to be like $200, $250, which sucks. All the hype beasts out there. Everyone out there is trying to make a profit. Please leave some to us people who just want to buy the shoe because it looks good so we can play in it. So the initial launch colorway is going to be a clear sole. Generally, as a rule of thumb, the solid soles are going to perform a little bit better. That being said, the Kyrie 4s I have, these with the solid traction is right where they are. The traction has been unbelievable, and I haven't had any of those initial slipping issues that people have had with the base one, where they're slipping at first and then it wears in. This right off the bat has been money. So between those two shoes at that price point, there's not much we need to spend more. That 120 is now the new market where like you should be able to get some of the best performing shoes at that price, and anything over, every brand really has to show why are we spending more. The Crazy Explosive is phenomenal. At 140, 160, you start second guessing, is it worth that money? Guys, hopefully you appreciated the video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Put your comments below. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Subscribe to the channel below. As always, I really appreciate you guys, and I'll come at you soon.